We're glad you're here today. Allison Schaberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. If you're here for the first time, you've never participated in any of our webinars, we're really, really glad that you're here today. If you're a serial attender and you attend a lot of our webinars, we are glad that you are back. So today is an interesting topic. It's actually not a topic, sometimes I touch on this a very little bit in some of our presentations that we've gone through, along the way. But today we're talking about divorce and special needs divorce and some things that you should have on your radar. So today's event is being recorded. After today, either later today or tomorrow, you guys will get an email with a recording. With the recording, it'll also have my contact information and Mary Ann's contact information and how to reach us, that kind of thing. Also, Consolidated Planning Group, we really put out a number of webinars on a monthly basis, and we have them all on our YouTube channel. So that is something that you can subscribe through to, and then you can kind of scroll through and kind of see what some of these topics are. But basically, they're all special needs planning, transition, college for special needs, you name it, it's out there. Guardianship, special needs trust, et cetera, et cetera. So whether you're having questions about Social Security, you're thinking about divorce, whatever it is that you're thinking about, there's some topics out there, and this will be out there as well. So having said that, what I wanted to first kind of preface to say is I'm really, really super excited to have Marianne Hughes with us today. She is the founder of Special Family Transitions, and she is a warrior mom of two boys. She'll share it with you a little bit more about her story. Two boys with special needs. So she is just near and dear to my heart. But one of the things that we share, so granted it was years ago, but I went through this process. So the first things first, I'm sorry that you're here for the reason that you are. So if you're here because divorce is imminent, it's on the horizon, you're in the middle of it, wherever you are in this process. I've been there, done that. Marianne's been there, done that, and it was really, really difficult on top of what you already do that is difficult in caring for your special needs loved one. But I just wanted to say and just encourage and say that there is light at the end of the tunnel. You're here in the right place today for sure. I can tell you for sure that there was a point, again, it was many years ago, and I have a wonderful husband now. Everything's wonderful. But many years ago, when you're in the middle of it, you honestly feel like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. There is no end in sight. There is it's pretty overwhelming. So if you're there and you're in that spot right now, we get it. We've been there and done that, and we're here today to tell you that there is help. There is help out there, and there are some specific things as parents, regardless of everything else that's going on. If you have a special needs child, there are some real specific things that you need to keep in mind. So I'm just not going to spend a lot of time on this. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We help put protection plans in place. We help develop lifetime care plans, transition planning, ABLE accounts, advocacy. We do all of that. And we meet with families one-on-one to kind of really identify what is already in place and, where you need to go from here. But I just don't want to take anything away from Marianne and what she has to share. So Marianne, I'm going to turn everything over to you. Today, everybody's microphones and cameras are muted, so we can't see you and we can't hear you. But your questions today are super important to us. So if you'll put your questions in the chat box, I'm going to get to as many of them as possible. And we're going to kind of go through the questions as we get them. So Marianne, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to turn everything over to you.
Thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate so much you asked me to be here today and to talk about my experiences and tips for special needs divorce. As Allison mentioned, my name is Mary Ann Hughes, and I'm with Special Family Transitions. So with that, I'll get started. So if you're here today, you've got a child with special needs and facing divorce, and I know how hard it can be. It's overwhelming. You don't know where to start, what to do, really how to best take care of your children. and get the best result in the process. And these are things that kept me up at night, and I'm sure for you as well, and consume my days as well. So I'm here today to share with you what I went through so that you can get some experiences, some learnings from that, and I'm here to share tips for you to help you on your path to success. Because as Allison said, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we will get there. So a little bit about me. I've got two wonderful boys on opposite ends of the autism spectrum. It's been a long road, and you can see from the picture they're older now. So they're actually, one just recently became an adult, and one's just 20. And so, you know, it was a hard road, you know, raising special needs kids, as you all know, from when they're little, getting their diagnosis. We got ours when they were each about 2 years old, to all the challenges that we face from you know, behaviors and social issues and other kinds of challenges. We've come a long way, but you know, still every day we still have new challenges that we face with. So, you know, over the years, it's a team effort to try to raise special needs kids, and do it with your family and support of others. You know, all times it takes a village. And so I was kind of not expecting that after 21 years, I did have to face the divorce situation. And my focus in that, even though you are hurt and there's a lot going on that you try to work through, my main intent was getting the best outcome for my children and figure out what I need to do to make everything possible for a possible good future for them. And my main focus was, like I said, trying to figure out what they needed. So it took a lot of time to research what was out there, what the steps were in divorce, and how to get the best result at the end of the day. So I spent over 2 years in that process, and actually my case went to trial, which is very rare in divorce cases. Only about 5% go all the way to trial, but it was a very difficult, long, stressful process that did take a lot of time, effort, and money and energy. And so I decided that really no one else should have to go through what I did and recreate the wheel. So I decided to start a venture to help other families with special needs divorce so that they can hopefully get there with less time, stress, and effort. And so, you know, when you first are facing divorce, it's overwhelming. You don't know what to do, where to turn. You're in a state of shock, depending on your circumstances. There may be a lot of hurt involved, denial, anger, and really you're going through the grief cycle, even though you don't really realize it at the time. And those feelings are normal. But, you know, end of the day, you got to figure out what's going to happen to you and your children and how to best deal with that. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What helped me initially, even though at first I kind of kept it to myself because I really wasn't sure what was happening, but really reaching out for help from the community. So when I finally did open up to family and friends, I found that they were very supportive and really helped me to kind of regroup and get on a path to be able to help my children and myself. And there's so many special needs organizations out there, whether they're online, in person, all kinds of different groups. And as Allison mentioned, we met at a resource fair. It happened to be the weekend right after my separation, and I was like a deer in headlights. I didn't know what to do first and where to start with what was happening. And so here she is at her booth, and we set up an appointment, and she gave me some great advice. And the best advice she gave me, which I want to share with you, is that really this is such an important time in your life, and these decisions you're going to make through this process are so important. Don't rush it. Really take your time, do what's going to be right for you and your family, so that years down the road, you'll be happy with the choices that you made. And so there's so many groups too, and I'm pretty active on Facebook. There's some great Facebook groups for special needs and autism, whatever your situation might be. There's also divorce groups that you can also get information from. And sometimes there's live support groups. I went to one called Divorce Care through a church, and that's a great program. There's other ones out there as well, depending on your situation and kind of the challenges you face. Also, in addition to groups, sometimes one-on-one therapy and counseling is helpful. I did some of that as well, and not just for you, but also for your children. They're going through a really hard time. And even though they're hard to find, and I can help you find some of those, but there are counselors that can help the children with the process and understand what's happening to their family.
I would echo Mary Ann that the divorce care group that you mentioned that's through churches is through churches all throughout the Houston, Fort Bend, wherever. I would echo that group, if you're Christian based, that group is really good, and it's free or cheap. I think you have to buy your book. But it is really good, and they have something else called DC4K, so Divorce Care for Kids. It is a really good program, and I would say even all the people that say they don't need it, they don't need the help, or they don't need the support, you'd be surprised how great that program is. So whether if you need to find one that's not Christian-based or whatever, I just know for sure that one does have a kids group as well. And some of the larger churches that might have a special needs ministry, there's a lot of churches that have a special needs ministry. Some of those larger churches may even have care for your special needs child. So anyway, just check that out. I just wanted to echo that, Mary Ann.
Yeah, that's great. That's great information for sure. My kids were too old for the divorce care for kids. I tried to look into that, and I tried so hard to try with different special needs ministers because my kids, one of them, really can't communicate that well, and really didn't. It was hard for us to find him at one-on-one risk as well. And so the best advice I was given, which I did implement, was actually creating a social story. And so it really is going to depend on your child. You know them best, and maybe you could work with the teachers at school or with other people that you work with, other therapists, whether it's a speech therapist or other behavioral therapists. Create something that shows them what's happening visually, like a visual schedule or just some kind of story to talk about the transition and what's happening in their lives. And that is a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I created one for my kids, and that's something that helped a lot as well. I also mentioned a YouTube channel. I have one as well, and I actually posted something about creating a social story on there. So there's so much information online about getting through the divorce process and what the steps are in divorce, even though it can be overwhelming. And actually with the online groups and Facebook groups is how I've got recommendations for lawyers. So you want to, when you go find a lawyer, make sure that it's one that's going to be a good fit for you. We'll go into that more later when we talk about lawyers, but make sure it's a good fit for you, someone that aligns with your values. There's all kinds of lawyers out there, and know that they're going to be a real important part of your team. So definitely you got to feel comfortable with them. And also, I didn't know this back then, but there's people who are divorce coaches, and they can help you through the process, kind of either if you need a little bit of help, a lot of help, but they kind of to be your partner, kind of guide you along the way, reassure you, and make sure that you're getting to the right path in the most positive fashion possible. I know that you're not alone. There's so many people out there who will help you. I've got nothing but support when sharing my story, but the first thing to do is share and seek out the help, and hopefully that will help you in your process as well. And so as a special needs mom or dad, if you're out there as well, we focus so much on our children, not on ourselves. And so a wake-up call to me during the separation and divorce process was that I really wasn't taking care of myself and put everybody else's needs before mine. But when you're in the situation, you really do have to take care of yourself and know that you are important. Your needs do matter. And to help other people, you've got to help yourself first. There's a expression I like that you can't fill someone else's cup if yours is empty. So you want to be able to do what you need to do for yourself, whether it's your health, your wellness, mind, body, and spirit. Just think positive thoughts, even though that in itself is not going to solve everything. But if you go in with a positive attitude, it's going to help things tremendously. Take care of what you're eating, working out if you can, if you're spiritual, go to church or whatever it might be. And I spent a lot of time, like I said, learning things, filling up with information to kind of help me on my process.
Marianne, I really think that this is true. I just wanted to spend a moment on this because whether you're going through a divorce or not going through a divorce, what I have seen is special parents. This is a lacking skill that all special parents seem to have whether you're going through a divorce or not. And so what we see is in the later years, it really starts to take a toll. So if you go years and years, 20, 30 years of putting everybody else in front of you and not taking care of yourself, it does fall apart later. So divorce or not, this is just super, super, super important. And like little things, like you mentioned, a church or whatever, a group, maybe it's a little thing. Maybe it's like that, maybe it's a daily bath with Epsom salt. Maybe it's a good book that you're getting you're getting lost in, and maybe it's just 30 minutes a day, or maybe it's 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes before you go to bed on that book or that meditation or that yoga or that something. But find that one thing because I really, really, really believe that one thing makes a difference, and kind of keeping you or getting you back to center. It's just so important. Thanks for sharing that, Mary Ann.
Yeah, those are good points. And yeah, I also mentioned about the churches. Do take advantage of some churches offer respite groups and parents' day out or evenings. So yeah, definitely do what you can to take a break, whenever you can, whether they're in school or not, even when they're home. Find a little time for you. I think that is important, whether it's a nap or extra cup of coffee or just a few minutes just to meditate or whatever it might be. Just, yeah, for sure. Because we know, divorce special needs children, and raising them can be very stressful on a marriage and on the people. And so, yeah, definitely, whether you're divorced, not divorced, thinking about it, or whichever stage you're in, definitely, as Allison said, take care of yourself, just for your own sanity. And as they say, on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first before you can help others. And that's just so true. And so there's so much emotion in divorce and so much going on that we've got to think about. But really, you want to now's where the rubber hits the road, I guess. You got to take some action. You got to make a plan and work towards those goals. And I know it can be overwhelming, but really think about what's important to you and your family. Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What do you want your relationship with your soon-to-be ex-spouse to look like? What do you want your kids to come out of this experience with? You want to, as much as possible, have a good relationship with the other person, and know that the kids can always confide in you if there are issues. But anyway, so take actionable steps toward your goals, and to help make a plan. Get help from people who can guide you, whether it's from people like Allison, people like myself, your attorneys, people who kind of know what to expect and let you plan for the future.
Marianne, here, one of the things, and you kind of hit on this, and one of the things that I said to you, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give people initially is avoid making huge financial decisions while in crisis, okay? So divorce is crisis. It's just crisis. It's not what anybody planned. If anybody was planning on getting a divorce, they would have never got married in the first place, right? So big financial decisions, buying another house, buying a vehicle that you might be upside down in, not having clarity of what your future income might be, those types of things. So people that waited on making big purchases, I've never, ever had a person that waited on making big purchases that felt bad about that decision or felt like it was the wrong decision. But I have had people that have made major financial decisions in crisis that have really, really regretted them. And so I think sometimes those are hard to undo. But again, working with professionals or working with a person that you trust and kind of talking through the rational mind and the rational brain, not saying that, you're not rational, but honestly, I don't know if I felt rational. I mean, I'm always rational, but when you're going through this and you're going through something that you've never gone through before, you're not thinking as rationally as you once did, And so finding people that and trust that are grounded, and is definitely helpful along the way.
Right, that's a good point. Because when you're in the midst of it, whether it's for a month or for a year, the emotions are front and center, and so it helps to kind of step back though and think of this as it sounds hard to say, but it's a business and legal transaction. It's a financial transaction. This is going to be probably the biggest transaction of your life in terms of whether it's selling a home or splitting your assets or whatever it might be. And so you got to look at it as something you would do in your job. It's not just the emotions that need to drive you, it's what makes sense in the end for you and your family to get the best result at the end. So yeah, definitely much as you can. I know it's hard in the moment, but think through what it is you're doing and what that's going to mean to you at the end of the day.
Marianne, I was thinking about something that we probably tell our kids about responding versus reacting. So when it comes to divorce, one thing I didn't say in the beginning of, we're not pro mom or pro dad. What I am is how you can settle this the most amicably that you can, because fighting costs money. So emotions cost money. The more emotional you are, the more emotionally reactively charged decisions people make that are usually poor when you're reacting versus responding. It ends up costing money. And so the divorce attorneys love this. The more you fight, the more angst, the more anger, the more issues there are, the more money they make, right? So at the end of the day, what we are is really trying to guide in such a way to where it's in the best interest of the special needs child. The state of Texas is going to look in the best interest of the child, okay? And so ultimately thinking about those types of things of in the best interest of the special needs child now, and now what about when they turn 18? Those are some of the things, and I know, Marianne, you're going to hit on some of that, so I'll let you carry that on. But what I know for sure is fighting is very expensive. If you can settle things out, if you can, and some people can't. I mean, there are real situations, emotional illness, mental illness, personality disorders, other things like that, like real issues that come up that we're fully aware of, and there may not be any other plan. But at the end of the day, it is our hope that if you can't agree on anything else, that we can agree that making sure that the kids are okay, and, at the end of the day, hopefully that's a good goal. And it may not always work out that way, but at the end of the day, if you can do that, it's going to be a lot cheaper. And in the end, the special needs child or the other children have more money for future things like college or transition programs or other care needs that they may have.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree. And, with anything in life, people want to be seen and heard and felt understood. And so, yeah, as much as you can, try to work with your soon-to-be ex-spouse, whether or not you're working with a lawyer, try to communicate directly, when you can, if you can. Like you said, sometimes it may not work or happen that way, but as much as you can, try and see where that takes you. Divorce is very complicated, depending on your needs. And unfortunately, with special needs divorce, it's not like you can go out there and do it online and be done. There's a lot of things you've got to consider for where you're now or where you need to be in the future. And so finding an attorney to represent you as a family law attorney is going to be really important, to find one that understands and has experience with special needs. So there's so many attorneys out there, and there's many great ones, but they may not have had, a lot of experience with special needs. And so if you end up choosing somebody like that, then you also want to find another attorney. There's special needs attorneys out there that can maybe help consult or review your decree, and you can bring them in as part of your case or consult separately. So lawyers do it all the time. But yeah, so you want to either find someone who already has experience, or if you're working with somebody else, bring somebody else in to make sure that you're covering everything that needs to be done. And we'll go into those aspects a little bit more in the presentation, but to make sure that everything's covered in special needs aspects, because it's so important to, once you have a divorce decree, to get those things changed is going to be really hard. So the main things that people do, your attorney's going to do in your case is, one, you've got the division of property, and that's a big thing. So you're going to divide up your assets. But then the bigger aspect in the special needs area is everything related to that child and what that's going to look like, the support, and everything else. And we'll go into that as well. But so these things can both be complicated. Maybe one is more complicated than the other, depending on your situation. But yeah, definitely you'll want to consider that. And plus, you might have another lawyer involved to create guardianship and other types of agreements and documents. So we've got to look at that as well. And in terms of the financial end, there's so much involved, not just for you in knowing how you're going to make it, if you're not working or if you are, whatever the case might be, but also really planning for your kids and what the situation is right now for their needs, how much It's going to require to maintain the level of care and lifestyle that they're used to and needing in terms of education and whatnot and support. And then what it's going to look like in the future. Say, right now, maybe they're in public school or if they're in private school. Well, when you turn 18, it's a whole different ballgame. You've got to find a place that they can go to, and depending on their abilities and where they are and what their needs are, it's hard to find places that will accept them. For my son, for instance, we looked at all different places, and based on his behaviors at the time, he couldn't even go to those. And so it's quite a challenge. And even if you're waiting on waivers to try to get benefits in the future, you don't know if and when those will come through and what they'll cover. And still you've got to kind of plan for worst case. I mean, hopefully you'll get some assistance, but in case you don't, for the foreseeable future, you need to be able to find a way as you're planning to figure out how you're going to address those costs and those needs. And so
a couple of things, Marianne. I think that, and if you guys have attended any of my presentations before, you've heard me say your situation is specialized, so you can't deal with generalist, okay? So, and that is exactly what you're saying, Marianne. It's like, so if you haven't already got an attorney, working with an attorney that is nuanced and special needs is going to be cheaper than hiring a divorce attorney and then hiring somebody to consult with your attorney, okay? That's going to be more expensive. But if you already have your attorney and then you need to do that, you just got to do what you got to do. But it is important. Divorce just isn't just straight up divorce when it comes to a special needs child that may need care for the rest of their life. And financial planning isn't just financial planning. When you have special care considerations and financial considerations that will extend long beyond the child turning 18. So again, I always use the analogy, like if you had a cardiac problem, if you had a heart problem, you're not going to your PCP, you're not going to go to see a foot doctor to talk to them about your heart problem. If you have a special needs child and you're going through a divorce, you need specialized people on your team, specialized people, nuanced and special needs planning. That's what Consolidated Planning Group does, special needs people as it relates to attorneys. So when it comes to attorneys, there's a couple of sets of attorneys that you may need. One is the special needs divorce attorney. And we do have some referrals. You can reach out to us directly. I know Marianne has some referrals. I have some referrals there as well, as far as some divorce attorneys that are nuanced and special needs. But a lot of times there's confusion on when it comes to special needs. What is the difference between a special needs attorney and a special needs planner? Okay. And so I simplify that by saying a special needs planner, Consolidated Planning Group, what we do is we're the money. Okay. The special needs attorney, they're the documents, they're the legal documents, they're the paper. Okay. And so a special needs planning attorney, they're going to help you with such things as guardianships, special needs trust, supported decision-making agreements, power of attorney, updating your wills. But anybody divorced, needs to update wills and things like that. But then there's that whole other subset of attorneys that are divorce attorneys or special needs divorce attorneys, and they typically don't get hung up in guardianship and special needs trust and things like that. One person had a question a few minutes ago, Marianne. Can you please talk about medical decision-making specifically? Husband copes via denial. Is that something the courts can specifically designate to one parent? And that is something that the courts can say that whoever has primary custody, I know there's oftentimes joint custody, but there's a primary, and that when the kids are in the primary custody of one, then they have that medical decision-making power. But that is something that your attorney can certainly ask for and can certainly work through. And even to the point of moving through guardianship, through divorce, like, we have a lot of our kids that need guardianship once they turn 18. So who is that? What if we have an adversarial ex-spouse that doesn't think they need guardianship via denial, whatever, or doesn't want you to have guardianship? You still just go through the process, and the courts really basically make the decision. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it. So before I move to the next slide, Marianne, did you want to comment on any of that?
Sure, yeah, because definitely there's different types of custody arrangements, there's possession arrangements, there's all different kinds of language out there and different type of things. But there's also something that's that's the decision maker, final decision for, they call it meds, heads, and ed. So it's medical, educational, and psychiatric type decisions. And so depending on what you request and what you may be granted, one parent may have that final decision-making authority. You may need to consult with the other parent, but you may be able to have that decision-making authority. And so even though, yeah, in guardianship, that's a term that we use in a lot of different ways, but even if you're co-guardians or one person's a guardian, the decision-making still is a little bit different from that. So yeah, definitely talk to your lawyer about those.
And that is like a whole nother topic on guardianship. We have that on our YouTube channel, and we have the whole, what if the ex is out of the country? What if the ex doesn't respond? What if the ex is against? I mean, what about partial guardianship? So that's all on our YouTube channel, and you can go deep and wide with that if that's on your radar. If you're here for this one, there may be many things on your radar right now, and you feel like you're drinking from the fire hose. So you can kind of listen to that when it's convenient for you. But just know from a guardianship perspective that process can start 6 months. It can start. It doesn't mean it has to. So if you're late and you still need to do it, you still can. But the process can start 6 months prior to the child turning 18.
And so, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go into this in depth, but know that there's different options for divorce. It could be, even with some special needs input, you could be simple enough as an agreement. It could be an agreement that you take and then decide what you want to do, and then take that to your attorney to finalize, or it could be one throughout the process called a settlement agreement that you may come to at some point. You can go to mediation, where a third party may help you come to an agreement. There's arbitration, where a third party will make a decision for you. It's kind of like a judge, but it's not a court thing and it's more private. So there's that route. And then, worst case, last case scenario is a trial if you can't come to an agreement any other way. There's also something called collaborative divorce, which depending on the situation, may work out if both parties are kind of, thinking about the what's best for the child and not fighting and not having a lot of other issues in the divorce. So that may be something to consider. The thing with that is if you then decide you don't agree with that process, and there's lawyers who are that help specifically with that, but if you decide you don't want to go that route anymore, then you got to change lawyers and then go the traditional route. So there's that. And go ahead.
I think some attorneys are more geared towards trials, right? They make more money if they go to trial. I mean, the answer is obviously trial is the most expensive route to go. And if you can avoid that by any stretch of the imagination, avoid it, because not only is it more expensive, but it could draw out for years, not just like, okay, let's just one and done, let's just get this over with and stuff like people feel. I mean, with continuations and, all the parts of divorce that have to be settled, from custody to, marital property, all of those types of things, it could take years. And with COVID, it made it more complicated, and they are doing things online. But be aware with that, because when you're talking about that emotional energy, that's huge. So, imagine how you're feeling right now. And I don't know how long you've been at this or anything like that, so if it's been going on for years or you're just new to this. But if you're just new to this and you've been at it for a couple of months, imagine this drawing out for 2 or 3 years, and the emotional energy that is just truly, it's bad. It's just a really long time. So you really have to think about that. Again, I'm so aware that some people have no other choice but to go down that trial highway. But think about your attorney and think about how they're wired. If they're wired towards keeping everybody in upheaval and anger and frustration and things and pushing you towards a trial, or if they're, really their mindset is the best thing that we can do is get this settled, and the smartest way we can do this is through mediation, things like that. Think about who you're hiring, I guess I would say. Okay, so you've got that on the special needs issues. We kind of talked about that a little bit ago. Let me check our chat box really quick. We have, let me just make sure. Okay. Any recommendations on how to broach this topic with your spouse initially, I had a counselor tell me, absolutely do not give a heads up and just file. If you aren't 100% sure your spouse is going to be a jerk about it, and I'm not 100% sure, I think good advice is don't take anybody else's advice, okay? Like, we don't know your spouse and we don't know what's going on, but I believe in that kind of thing that you learn as a child of treat others the way that you would like to be treated. And so if the situation were reversed and he blindsided you, would you feel blindsided? Would it feel horrible? And another concept I always use with my kids is just do the next right thing. Do the next right thing, right? So if you do the wrong thing, if you do something that is kind of underhanded, then that starts this one-upmanship, this fighting, the battle. The fight is expensive. Fighting is expensive. And so I would say always try to do the next right thing, even if the other person on the other side does the next wrong thing. In the end, you look back and you don't have regrets and you don't feel sorry. You can't feel sorry for doing the next right thing. What do you think about that, Mary Ann?
Yeah, I agree. And it comes down to what we were saying earlier about, if you take the emotion, there's a lot of emotion, but really at the end of the day, it's a matter of how you're going to take care of your child. And so do you want all that time and energy and money, sifted away from your child, spent on lawyers in this whole process, or do you want to be able to spend that time and energy and money on your child? And so, and that's the reason that, what Allison does and the whole planning process is so important, because you want to get a good picture of what it's going to cost for your child now as well as in the future. And those are the numbers that you need to think about and work towards, hopefully together, collaboratively with even if you're in another kind of process. But, you both need to understand, what is it going to cost for this child, to live and survive and to get the services that they need? And that's the numbers that you need to be working with. Because, if you don't know what you want, you're not going to know when to end the process, I guess is the point. So, know how much it's going to cost in terms of it's a child support or money in a fund or whatever it might be, whatever money to work towards to make sure the child has what they need in the future. How are you going to get there? And that's what you can come to agreement on. Whether it's through this process or some other process, but at the end of the day, you want to get everybody on board. There may be issues, where maybe one party's in denial of the child's disabilities, or really, is it really going to cost that much? There's a lot of that going on sometimes, depending on your situation. So, as much as you can, try to present objective as possible explanation of what you're dealing with and what it's going to take for that child to have a good life. And, I don't know, many parents that would argue with it, when you put it in those kind of terms. And so don't turn it into an emotional battle, even though it can be. But to address the other person's question, I think some good advice, if you're thinking about divorce or don't know if you're going to file or the other person's going to file first, make sure to collect whatever documents you can. You don't have to tell them you're doing it, but just know what your snapshot is. Know what assets you have. Some people are fully aware and engaged in the financial planning of their household, and some are not. So I would say, before you do anything that can't be reversed, go ahead and make sure you get a clear picture of where you are today before the divorce, so that during the divorce you can better put together those documents that they're going to be asked for anyway.
And one thing that I say from a Consolidated Planning Group perspective, we can work with you with a spouse, without a spouse, but like the against a things, against a spouse. So like from a collaborative perspective, I can sit down and be this middleman of like, let's look at this, objectively. And so I use the emotional mind versus like, analogy of wise mind. And so when it comes to these decisions that we're making, it's, again, important to be using your wise mind as opposed to your emotional mind. It's important, again, to respond not react. Reacting costs more money. Emotional decisions cost more money. And in the end, the kids have less. If we spend more money, the kids have less. And so just kind of keeping that in mind, I think is definitely important. But we can help with that. So like if a person is like, working together through this of like, what are the future care costs? We can help with that. How do we fund the special needs trust for our special needs child in the future? We can help with that. We can talk through some of the things that may be important, like life insurance on each of the parents. So if something happens to mom, Mary Ann, that the dad is, the dad of the special needs trust, whoever that future caregiver is going to be of the kids, is going to have adequate money to fund the trust for these kids. So we can talk about what that number looks like. Getting these things in place early on. A lot of attorneys, divorce attorneys, don't care about that because they might not have a special needs child. They don't get that. They don't get how important it is to fund these special needs trusts in the future. Going back to the well on that later is difficult. So, if this is something that's important to you, these are things that we can help with and kind of help guide some of those conversations and provide calculations that might be helpful for both parties.
You may know your child has a disability and they may have a report at school, but it's important for Social Security purposes that disability be established by the age of 22. So if you don't have a doctor's report, be sure to get that for your use in the future, as well as in your divorce situation if you need to. And so, with that, as Allison said, to limit the contentiousness about the divorce, hopefully both parties can agree to the disability and agree that the child is disabled, and that will save you a whole lot of trouble. If not, then you've got some other routes to take, but definitely get that out and open and just, accept that hopefully as a fact, and then just deal with that. So we talked a lot about, life care planning, what's it going to cost for the current and future needs for the child. And really, to me, that's what the divorce came down to, was making sure that I had a good handle, an idea of what it was going to cost and what supports financial will be in place for my children in the future. And so, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but when you're looking at splitting your property, which is just one part of divorce, and division of the estate, a lot of people think it's 50-50, community property estate and all that. But know that there's circumstances where you may get a disproportionate share. That means you may get more than 50% or less than 50%, depending on what your situation is. So definitely discuss that with your attorney if there's factors in your case that would lead to you having a different share than 50-50. And child support, like I said, that's a big area. And so, in a typical divorce, child support may end at 18. But if you've got a special needs established disability, then you can get indefinite child support, which means past age 18, which they call the age of emancipation, you can still get support. Indefinite means for lifetime. So know that the number you're going to agree to is so important, because you want to make sure that you're going to get support for the entire lifespan for the child if warranted. Now, not to say that you can't go back later and modify that, and that happens a lot. You may ask for more. Somebody may ask for the PLS, and that is out there. So don't think once you're done, this is all over. Some people, constantly are in legal issues, based on child support. But as much as you can, work towards the best number that you can for now. And so there is a formula out there they call guideline support. And once again, that doesn't necessarily apply to special needs. There's formulas out there if you've got one child, 2 children, 3 children, another children by the different parent. So there's formulas that the judges try to use, but they don't necessarily have to be. So to keep that in mind as well. And for child support, what's really important, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as well, is that child support is considered the child's money. And so that needs to be paid into a first party trust, also called a Medicaid payback trust. And the reason for that is that you don't want to lose eligibility for your government benefits. You can only have $2,000 of assets. And if you exceed that, and over time, child support is going to, in one big pot, maybe exceed that, then they'll lose their benefits. So you definitely want to be real careful with how the money is noted, especially if the child is going to be 18 or is already 18. Like I said, we can always change things later, but it's better to get it right up front.
So one of the questions that we get all the time, because this is something that we put out there all the time, because honestly, a lot of parents don't even know, and quite honestly, a lot of divorce attorneys that aren't focused in special needs, they don't know that this needs to happen because they don't know about SSI and Medicaid. They're not specialized in that. They don't get about losing benefits. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking they won by getting you child support indefinitely post 18, and they don't think about this little nuance, and it's a big deal. So if you are getting child support post 18, and you still are, and it's not going to a special needs trust, and your child is getting SSI and Medicaid, you do need to get in with an attorney right away. You do need to get an agreement to get this redirected to a first-party special needs trust. If the Social Security Administration hasn't caught up with you yet, they will, and then they're going to tell you that you owe them all that money back, okay? So this is a real big deal. So you're not skating under the radar. You might for a little while with the Social Security Administration, but they will catch up with you, and then they'll tell you that you owe them tens of thousands of dollars back. So this is super, super important. Again, the easiest way to go about doing this is with an agreement. It's not changing the child support amount. It's just saying, I'd like it to be redirected to a first-party special needs trust. If the child support payer is in agreement with this, then you can have your attorney draw it up. Everybody can sign off on it, and it can be signed off on by a judge. One problem with this in the state of Texas right now, and again, we have other conferences that we talk a little bit more about this, is that it doesn't go through the child support system. So when it's being directed to a third party trust. So right now, going through the Texas child support system, there's like an enforcement system in place. When it is going through a first party special needs trust, that enforcement system in place in Texas does not currently apply to those special needs trusts. So you do need to know that it could be a potential risk. And of course, you can get it worked out, but with an attorney, and it costs more money and blood out of a turnip, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just be thinking about that. Are you ready for the next slide, Marianne?
I'm just finished here. And so there's also, kind of soft issues, I guess, to discuss that you'll want to come to agreement on with your spouse, through your attorneys or whatever process you take in terms of custody, in terms of possession time, parenting plan. How are you going to parent, with a schedule and different responsibilities. So yeah, keep in mind that it's not just all numbers. You've got to also think about other things. And if they're over 18, things are a little bit different. But if you're under 18, then they can, you've got a possession schedule, and you can. Some people even do 50-50 possession, or you can do live with one parent and visit the other one on. They have things called standard possession orders and extended ones. All kinds of arrangement depending on what's going to work for you.
We have a question that says, my son is 9. Should I request the trust now? I make too much money for him to qualify for Social Security benefits. So again, we would suggest that you work with a qualified attorney, but I do suggest you get what you need to get in the beginning when you're getting this divorce settlement. So 9 years from now, when he's 18, going back to the wall is difficult. So getting your child support directed to a first party special needs trust now might be a smart idea. It depends if there's other kids and if part of his part, whatever, an attorney will help you sort that out. But once your child turns 18, it's not based off of your how much money you make. It's about him and what his assets are once he turns 18, even if he still lives with you. So although he's probably not going to qualify for SSI and Medicaid between now and the time he turns 18, given your circumstance that you put out there, in the future, when he turns 18, he likely will. Okay, so we want to keep less than $2,000 in your son's name, and depending on his disability and qualifications through Social Security Administration, it is very possible and likely that he'll qualify for that for SSI and Medicaid at 18. So you do want to preserve that eligibility. What an attorney will help you figure out is if the wording should be that you get your child support now until he turns 18, and once he turns 18, then it's directed to a first party special needs trust. That might be the wording, because then child support enforcement would be on it between now and the time he turns 18, and then directed to a special needs trust when he turns 18. So they'll help you identify that if that is possible. So I got about 8 minutes left, Marianne. I'm going to move on to the next slide.
And so we talked quite a bit about the trust already. I just want to point out that these are the assets of the child. So sometimes, not just child support, but if they have an inheritance or a settlement from a lawsuit, that needs to go into that first party trust as well. And sometimes trust is a scary term. And just know that it becomes a bank account. And the money that you have access to, and if you're the trustee, then you can make payments on that. And so on that subject, there's different ways to spend that money. And then I'll jump down to able account. That's an instrument that allows you a little bit more flexibility in how you use funds. And I'm not going to go into the detail of that now, but know that there's different ways that the child can get money, different ways that you can use that money. There are some limitations depending on which instrument, and especially if you look at if they're getting SSI as well, each pot of money can be used in different ways for different things. So you'll have to work with a financial person or trying to figure all that out through the process. And then the third party special needs trust is also important. And Allison talked about life insurance. So if you're going to do a life insurance policy payable for the benefit of the child, it doesn't actually name the child by name. It needs to be as a third party special needs trust for that child. And that way that trust gets funded, the passing of that parent or that individual. And you can also do a third-party special needs trust while the parents are both living. As part of the divorce, you may agree, okay, I'm going to put, whatever X amount into a pot, and that's where it would go for that child's use.
This is where if grandma and grandpa are going to leave your special needs child money, it needs to go into a third-party special needs trust. Bottom line is most people that have a special needs child need a third-party special needs trust. There's no Medicaid payback on that. Life insurance proceeds, grandma and grandpa leaving money, family members leaving money, things like that can all go into the third-party special needs trust. And again, we have definitely attorneys that can help with that. The ABLE accounts, that's something that we help with as well, the 529A. We have whole presentations on that, but basically the first party trust, third party trust, and an ABLE account are places where you can have money more than $2,000 for your special needs child that will not disqualify them for SSI and Medicaid. You can only put $15,000 a year into an ABLE account. You can only have up to a total of $100,000 before you would disqualify for SSI, and that's why you would need a third-party trust and an ABLE account. We go into a lot of detail on that on other webinars. But the main thing you hit right here on the head, and we talk about this all the time in our meetings, life insurance, the third-party trust is the beneficiary. So if you don't take anything away from this, which I know you've taken a lot because this has been awesome, do not name your special needs child definitively as a named beneficiary. So if your son's name is John Smith, do not name John Smith as a beneficiary on anything you have, or you're going to make them disqualify from SSI and Medicaid. How you do it is you name the third-party special needs trust for the benefit of John Smith, and then it goes in the right bucket, and John continues to get his SSI and Medicaid. So anyway, we go deep and wide with this, and happy to talk further, with you in reference to your specific questions. But this is super, super important, and common ways where people have made critical mistakes as it relates to the future eligibility of benefits, for their kids.
For sure. And I'll say about guardianship is that, depending on the ability of your child, guardianship may be warranted. You can also, which takes away their rights basically. So it's a kind of a serious process. You have to go in front of a judge and hire an attorney and draft up, documents for that. But there's also less restrictive possibilities. You can do a partial guardianship. You can do powers of attorney. You can have something called a supported decision-making agreement, which you can just download online and just sign and have a notary sign that. So depending on what your child needs and where they are, it will guide kind of where we need to do on that. And so we talked about a lot of things today. I know it's kind of overwhelming, like Allison said, it's kind of a fire hose today, but remember, take care of yourself, educate yourself about the process, go out there, seek support, accept support, take the advice of people who've been through it, who can guide you through the process. Set a vision for yourself, for your goals, what you want your life to look like before and after the divorce. This is not a one-time thing. You're going to have to live with the decisions and the tone that's set through this process. So definitely, do the best you can for your family. Build your team to help you through all the aspects, legal, financial, and the special needs, especially for us. Do what needs to be done. It can be overwhelming, but just take one step at a time, have an action plan. And if you need help getting through that, there's people out there who can help you get to the end result in your divorce. And be positive, stay strong. We talked about this is overwhelming, but just, know it'll be over and we'll come out the other side. I'm proof of that. Allison's proof of that. It does get better.
For sure.
So based on my experience, I didn't want anyone to have to go through all the heartache and all the stress and spend as much money as I did. To be frank, it was a whole lot of money that I didn't ever think I would spend on a divorce. But, for me, it was money, well spent. I don't think I didn't want to spend that much, but I thought I had to in my circumstance. And so, I'm here to help other people through the process so that hopefully it will be easier for you and hopefully, better use of your resources, time and otherwise. And so create a vision as to where you want to be in the future. I can help you, whether your child is a minor or an adult disabled child. I can help you find lawyers and experts knowledgeable in what you need for your special needs child. I can help you research programs, let you know what's out there. People like Allison can do that, a lot of that as well. And, a lot of my work comes in with kind of the getting ready for meetings, knowing what to do in a divorce, because it's overwhelming. You've got divorce professionals and you've got other people, but who's the one at the end of the day that needs to get you to where you need to go? I mean, you can either do it yourself, which is great, but like Allison said, the emotions sometimes get in the way. You need someone to help guide you and kind of redirect you, help you on track, give you some other ideas of things that might work that maybe you're not aware of even. So I think I hope to try to provide value there. And a lot of times you're going to have to create documents, respond to notes and emails, and create different kinds of analyses for your attorneys. And I can help you with that as well.
Basically, we had a question. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And Cynthia, I think this might be an offline question with Mary Ann. Is there any way to request modifications through the court for child support and custody agreement if I can't afford to pay an attorney and I represent myself? So it's 10 years later. And so, I think she needs some help with an attorney. So I'm going to say to reach out to Mary Ann offline on that one. So that way she can have a better understanding of your situation. And my understanding and my knowledge and background with Mary Ann, I know that she can help you in your unique situation. Also, if an ex-husband loses his job, does he still owe the child support? And the answer is yes. But he could go back to the judge, to the attorney, and request a modification based off of a material change in circumstance, which loss of job or a drastic change in income. So just because a person loses a job doesn't throw the child support order out the window. They still owe it until they can get back in front of a judge, and a judge puts forth another order, and they still owe it even if they can't pay it. So that's kind of, and that goes both ways. So whether you're mom or dad and responsible for paying child support, it goes both ways for that. So the answer is if a person does lose their job and they're responsible for paying child support, the sooner they contact an attorney and to get that in front of a judge, the better, because otherwise it just goes on and on and on for months and months and months. So what we have here, it was in the chat box as well. We have Mary Ann's contact information, and I've got 101, so we're going to end this. But again, you are going to get an email with all of our contact information and a link to the video for today's meeting. And so any, specific questions that you guys have, if you need help on the special needs planning side, the financial side of the house, certainly I'm your girl. I can help you with that. We have an awesome team at Consolidated Planning Group We're all very well versed in all of these topics. So whether you get me or anybody on the team, we work collaboratively. So we're happy about that. These are all things that should be on your radar. We have webinars on all of these things on our YouTube channel, which you'll have a link for in your email as well. And here is, well, there's the links for our Facebook and YouTube and how to contact us. Having said that, we've got some thank yous out there. And Marianne, I would just like to thank you personally for being here today. This is the first time that Marianne and I have partnered together for a webinar. And this is such an important topic. It's something that not everybody talks about all the time. You often do feel alone if you're going through this process, but you're totally not alone, and you are going to get through this. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and we can definitely help you with all of these things. So I hope you walk away today feeling very encouraged, and that you are in the right place today, at least for an hour. So thank you so much, Marianne, and I'm happy connecting with the folks that attended today.
Great, thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Please reach out if I can help.
Yeah, have a great afternoon. Take care.